What is the worst company you've worked for? Write in the comments what you think about it. The worst company you've ever worked for? Enjoy the show. Story 1. I worked at a national cookie retailer, married to Mr. Fields, in a slowly dying mall. Business was so slow that it couldn't support a second person on shift most days. This led to 12-plus-hour days, from open to close, running the cookie stand by myself. During winter months, we made less than $100 a day. I couldn't take a break because it would leave the store unattended. When I told my boss this was illegal, he required all employees to sign a form waiving our rights to breaks. I promptly found another job delivering calzones, which turned out to be one of the most enjoyable places I've ever worked. Story 2. A certain national cookie retailer married to Mr. Fields. I worked in a slowly dying mall, and there was not enough business to support a second person on shift most days. This led to 12-plus-hour days, open to close, operating this goddamned cookie stand by myself. During winter months, we would take in less than $100 a day. I couldn't take a break because that would leave the store unattended. When I brought up how that is illegal to my boss, he decided to require all employees to sign a form waiving our rights to breaks. I promptly found another job delivering calzones, which turned into one of the more enjoyable places I've ever worked. Story 3, Australian here, was with a local EB Games for less than 2 weeks BC. I was apparently too slow when it came to learning on the job. Manager would have me on her lunch break and would leave the store. My shift was at a time that no one would come in at, and my shift would end before school ended, which would have been the perfect time for me to learn. But I had little to no interaction with customers, and when I did, I had to call her back in to help me. BC, she hadn't taught me how to do returns or orders. I had no one else with me to help me. I was alone. And on the last day I ever went the shop, I was told I was too slow and made one mistake which resulted in her letting me go. It was the one job I wanted since I was little, and I barely got the chance to savor it. So for the next 3 years after they let me go, I never went there again, and they closed down sometime in 2023. Story 4. I won't say the name for privacy reasons, but I did briefly work for a small local company. That was the worst. It was basically a labor job, and it wasn't that hard. However, I got Lyme disease and I had to miss 2 days of work with a doctor's note. When I tried to come back in, they told me not to come back. This was years ago, so there's not really anything I can do about it now, and I should have tried to pursue legal action back then, but I do live in an at-will state, so I'm not even sure if there would be anything to pursue. I think this is the worst job I've had because I put in so much effort at this job. I was coming in when others weren't and doing the work of 3 or 4 people at a time. Sometimes I'd be the only one to show up for a shift. I've since learned that a job is a job, and I can get fired for anything anytime. Story 5. Having nice things like name-brand clothes, cars, tech, etc., it's never been something I could really afford in the first place. But I don't feel like my life is missing anything by not having these things. Sure, I like to treat myself to some nice food every once in a while, and I do wish that I could have the basic tech stuff to play newer video games, but outside of that, I just don't care, and don't want to spend the money on any of it. Material possessions can easily be lost due to circumstance. I'd rather have experiences. Story 6. I work in property as a financial manager in South Africa. Left a great job for one closer to home and more money after doing my research. When I got there, I realized the top brass are a bunch of racist motherfuckers. I'm white, but they told the black clerks if there is a strike by public transport, happens a few times a year, and they can't get to the office, they are not getting paid. The CFO insisted that his staff at home call him and his wife master and mistress. And the nepotism was great with lots of cousins and kids working there. They got away with murder, while if a black person did the same, they got a written warning. One of my team asked for a half-day off to take their kid to the doctor, and I of course agreed, and I got a written warning because I didn't clear it with the CFO. She was not a nice person. Fuck you, Adele. You are a horrible person, and I really hope karma bites you in your racist ass in the future. I got out of there as soon as I could, and advised all the people in finance to find other jobs as the treatment they were getting were bloody awful. Story 7. Private military company in Africa. I won't go into too much detail, but there was a country in Africa where the military attempted a hostile takeover of the government. The government hired a private military to protect itself. I'm just a contracting engineer, not a soldier. I was hired by the PMC to update the diagnostic systems of a few helicopters. While I was there, I watched the PMC take advantage of that small country in every way possible, jacking prices, essentially demanding tribute from these poor people under the threat of pulling out and allowing the military to take over. Story 8. Both of the times I've worked for family-owned businesses. Work is not family. It's work. But since everyone in the family thinks that work is family, they expect their non-family employees to have the same attitude. Then you add in the grown kids who never had to work for anything, went to college just to say they went, but always knew they'd come back and work for the family, so they were horrificially underqualified to do literally anything, and yet also knew that they could do no wrong and tended to treat everyone else like garbage. To this day, when I see a company proudly advertise itself as family-owned and operated, I think, man, I feel sorry for everyone else working there. Story 9. Enterprise. All car rental companies are shit to work for, but I don't have first-hand experience with the others like Hertz or Avis. I just know because our counter was right next to theirs at a major airport, and every day, we all had issues or customers yelling at us. On to the shitty parts of the company and job. Upper management doesn't give a shit about you, obviously. They will allow as many reservations to go through as possible, regardless of if our branch could keep up with the demand. Some days we won't have enough cars. Some days we will, but we simply can't handle the load of getting cars cleaned. Our car cleaners have to wipe down everything because the 3 wash bays we have are out of commission every other week. And even though the equipment belongs to the airport, they just don't care and never bother to fix it, only patch it up. We have one covered spot for the detailers to clean a car under. The others have to make do with the space next to it, completely uncovered and under direct sunlight. Weather's getting hot now too, but is management going to do anything about it? No. Why? Because the airport has final say in anything we try to do because our contract is with them, and they can write it up however they want. Management loves seeing high volume of reservations because it makes the branch's numbers look better, and the region's numbers better. The more cars on rent, the less cars sitting on the lot depreciating, so they'll always say yes to same-day reservations and walk-up reservations. The rest of us grunts be damned. They work our asses down to the bone and grind us up and tell us to take more reservations. Oftentimes it gets so busy that all but one person at the counter has to go clean. It gets way too busy for one person to handle the counter all by themselves. I'm talking long lines of people coming in after getting off a flight while phones are ringing non-stop. And calls only ever come in when we have a line, but when there's no line, no calls. And if we do get a call, it usually comes in multiples, so I'll pick up one call, 2 more comes in. I'm not picking that up, and I'm not putting them on hold. I'm ignoring it. Fuck that shit. They make you try to sell damage waiver and liability, but we can't call them insurance or coverage because blah, blah, blah. They make us try to upgrade from a lowly Corolla into this nice luxury Audi A3 for only an extra $40/day. They make us try to sell prepaid fuel, which is an absolute rip-off BTW. They try to get us to upsell anything and everything as much as possible. Why? Because that boosts the branch's numbers and the region's profits so management in the region can fatten up their bonus. What do customer service reps and detailers get? Hot air. Then there's switch-outs. Upper management tells every branch to give a customer options on cars for any switch-outs that come in, but they want us to rent as many vehicles as possible and run as tight as possible. But they also want us to have spare cars on site for unpredictable, unexpected switch-out customers. Make that make sense. So, a customer from some other branch has an issue with their rental, calls customer service or roadside, they tell them, go to branch XYZ, they'll have a car ready for you when you go in FRFR, and I'm the sucker working the counter at branch XYZ by myself, while everyone else is busting their asses, cleaning cars for the rush at noon, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 8 p.m. You get the idea. When this pissed-off tourist comes in, you have a new car for me. Roadside said it'll be ready when I come in. What kind of car is it? I need a bigger car than the one I booked. No. Roadside told you that to get you off the phone. They did not tell me anything about a switch-out. You did not call us to check in. I have 21 reservations at noon, 16 at 1 p.m., 24 at 2 p.m., 11 at 3. I have this Mitsubishi Mirage, and it's the only thing I have. Customer starts yelling. I tell them if they don't calm TF down, I am calling security and they're not getting a car from us. Once in a blue moon, management will take pity on us and realize they've been working us to the bone, dry and rough, so they bring in pizza for the office. Great. All's well, boss man as. Thanks for this very appropriate compensation. After nearly getting a heat stroke 5 days of the week. Sometimes when a customer books a sedan and we don't have one, we'll free upgrade them into an SUV, a Rogue or RAV4 or something. Oftentimes when we're really tight on sedans and mid-size SUVs, but have a bunch of minivans and full-size SUVs, management will tell me, Get these people into minivans and large SUVs. It's such a pain in the ass because not every customer wants a minivan or big-ass Suburban and just wants a goddamn Camry. The customer suffers, I suffer. Management gets their numbers up and gets their bonuses/promotions. Sometimes I'll see a same-day booking come in and I ask manager if we can even take that same day. Yep, we can take it. Just give them a minivan or large SUV. Underscore. Sometimes they'll make me call the customer to let them know it's going to be a large vehicle when they booked a Nissan Versa or similar. Fuck you. If you want their money so bad, why don't you call them and tell them we don't have the sedan they booked? You're the ones profiting off of this. I just get to suffer. Sometimes a person will call or email management about renting an exotic vehicle. They'll pass the call or email to me and say, contact the customer, tell them we'll have an Audi A5 for their luxury performance sport, so like a 911 or M3 or something. Or, tell the customer we can 100% definitely get them going into the muscle car they booked. The muscle car we have? An EcoBoost Mustang. Not a GT with the V8, a fucking turbo 4-banger, and they'll want the customer to pay $200/day for that plus a $600 deposit. And I get to be the lucky fella that tells the customer all that. They understandably get upset and yell at me for ripping them off for trying to rent them a basic-ass 4-cylinder as a muscle car. Why the fuck are muscle cars considered exotics anyways? And of course, there's always the type of customer who's never happy about anything they get and only wants to complain. It is customer service after all. For anyone graduating college soon and see all the enticing emails and notifications to join enterprise after you get your degree, I don't recommend it. Like it all, what a joke of a company. Story 10. Target. I worked at Walmart for several years and then worked at Target after that. As bad as Walmart was, Target was worse. Target required me to push that credit card to everyone I talked to, no matter how brief the interaction. If I didn't, I would get threatened with a write-up. I remember the floor supervisor constantly asking me why a customer didn't sign up, or telling me to push it in a different way. They would make me help unload the truck in the morning every day. I was a cashier, and got paid way less than the stock people. I have severe asthma as well, and I told the HR person I had it. And I remember getting a tax while unloading. They track how fast you're checking out customers. It wouldn't matter as the delay was caused by customer routing through their purse counting change or filling out a credit card application. If you were too slow, you'd get a write-up. I was really fast, and I still felt constant anxiety. There was other bad stuff, but it's been forever and don't remember everything anymore. I just remember I dreaded work every day. Overall, I don't think I even lasted 6 months, whereas I worked for Walmart over 3 years. Story 11. Salvation Army. Constant threats saying they will shut down the store if we don't sell more expensive items. Saying things like, if we don't meet our quotas, then you will be out of a job, and you will be out of a job, and you will be out of a job, and everyone who depends on us in the whole city will have nobody to turn to, all because you all are horrible at selling furniture and mattresses. So unless you don't want to ruin hundreds of people's lives, you'll work harder. Working for 120 out of 124 days with many double shifts each of those days and 100-plus hour weeks. Refusing employees to wear hats or any protective gear against the sun on days that were 30-35°C, 86-95°F without Humidex. Firing an employee because he missed one shift because his wife was giving birth and he called in and let them know well in advance. District managers stealing items designated for auctions, jewelry, watches, electronics, antiques, etc., under the guise they were going to other stores and would never arrive, lying to employees about benefits, saying they didn't have any or didn't qualify for them, to find out that they had them, lying to employees saying they did not have any vacation time built up, to only find out that some of them, including me, had weeks and weeks built up, but we were always told we hadn't worked enough. Giving permission to an employee to take damaged clothing to make into stuffed animals for children in hospitals and at shelters, to only fire her the next day for stealing literal garbage. Being rude, abrasive, and demeaning to mentally challenged volunteers, essentially using them for free labor, when they proved themselves to be a very, really good member of the team, cutting their hours back to almost nothing because we can't have people like them be the first things people see when they come in. Putting employees with court-ordered volunteers who had serious violent and disturbing criminal records. For example, one man who was there for a few days had dozens and dozens of sexual assault charges against him, and they put him in the small donation room with women in their late teens or early 20s without letting them know why he was there, telling employees to do extremely dangerous things, like mix chemicals together to clean the floors because they never bought any cleaning supplies, and employees had to use whatever was donated and available. One incident causing a horrible situation with mustard gas, telling employees to throw out hazardous chemicals and other things that contained radioactive materials into the dumpster like boat radars and radon containers, telling employees to climb into dumpsters to jump up and down to compact it more because we can still fit more in there without any protection or gear or anything like that. Hiring new employees and then telling them they will only be hired if they can get vote on their side to remove union leaders from the store and then vote in a person who is of the management's choosing. Threatening employees for going out of their way to help elderly or disabled customers. For example, 2 employees at the store I was at were threatened to be fired because they delivered a mattress to an elderly man who bought it for his wife, who just got out of the hospital from cancer surgery on her back, and he couldn't move it on his own. The employees did it in their own vehicle, on their own time, and for free for the man. Threatening employees for contacting customers who clearly accidentally donated items they did not mean to. For example, a locked box was donated full of mementos and military items and medals from someone. Through an online search, the donator was found and was extremely happy that they were called. The management threatened to fire the employees because, do you know how much those medals could have been worth? Fighting with all their legal power against injury claims by employees. They will do whatever they can to not have to pay employees when they are off because they are injured. They will fight in any legal route as much as necessary to not have to pay them. One lady slipped and dislocated both of her hips. It was horrific. They fought so that they didn't have to pay her a penny during her month and a half off, then fired her within 2 weeks of coming back because she was on modified duty and couldn't really do much other than greet customers. She was the lady fired for making the stuffed animals for kids. One employee volunteered to work at the Salvation Army camp every year. The manager at the time said it was fine for her to go and do that for 2 months, and her job would be here when she got back. That manager left a few months later, and the district manager was informed of the situation and said, "Well, when you come back, you can drop off your resume and we will consider it." She was volunteering for the SA camp. I could go on and on and on and on and on about it. But the Salvation Army is a horrible, disgusting organization, and full of dishonest and selfish people who will do anything to get higher up in the organization, because when you get high enough, they pay you insane amounts of money to live remotely in places like Bermuda and work from home. Story 12, Dillard's. They run their salespeople to death. You end up doing the work of 4 people or more depending on what's going on with staffing in the store. Price changes, building displays, cleaning, putting out the merchandise, clearing fitting rooms and sales calls, on top of training new staff, taking training classes and selling the products. You have a sales goal that must be met or you get your pay cut. Take enough cuts and they fire you. Some of those price changes are done inside of storage rooms, places without customers. This makes everyone who works there crazy, to the point people are actively sabotaging each other. Make you goals, cool, you keep your job. Go beyond your goals, get a raise, and your goals go up. It doesn't matter what you did in the past, every new review period is a new ballgame. The family that owns the company is crazy competitive with each other. So the insanity is on every level. They want you to stab each other in the back because they think it's normal behavior. I once saw a C-suite executive piss on the ladies' room floor trying to screw someone else out of a promotion. She just stood like a baby giraffe in her pencil skirt trying not to hit her high heels with pee. I worked there for 5 years in one of the bigger stores in the country. I do not recommend it. Story 13. I have had the worst experiences with small businesses, unfortunately. Boomers who have been doing business the same way for 20 or 30 years and refused to shut down during the pandemic, primarily hired relatives or friends, because they knew they could abuse them without legal repercussion. I'm talking unpaid nights and weekends, no breaks, emotionally manipulating younger employees to get free labor out of them, etc. And if any employees spoke out about the exploitation, they would retaliate in full force. I now stick to Giant Core, which have their problems, but at least they have protocols and some protections for workers because they take lawsuits seriously. Story 14. Optum Health. They care more about their shareholders than employees or patients. The top brass are narcissists, and middle management are nothing but bootlickers and useless. They are constantly being investigated by the government, and as you can see, they have been breached so many times. They refuse to invest in IT properly, and they have a conflict of interest. They no longer hire employees, only contractors. Even if you were a full-time employee like I was, they give you the shittiest of the shittiest health benefits. They deny prescription coverage to their own employees. Your raise is a barely 1.5 to 3% if you are lucky. You are on a pay grade system, and you can hit the ceiling pretty quick. The only way to get a raise beyond this is to move to a different department. They are so bad that doctors refuse to contract or work for them, and ended up closing parts of the medical facility because they couldn't staff doctors or nurses. They then refused to accept some medical insurances and canceled patient appointments and did the bare minimum to find diabetic patients care. Every third Thursday of the month they have layoffs. Story 15 Sandvik. Probably fine to work for if you're based in Sweden, but all of their internal policies mostly take into account how they are going to affect people there, while ignoring the sometimes outlandishly stupid effects they're going to have on people elsewhere, but apply them the same regardless. I worked in IT for them before they outsourced most of it to IBM. They shuffled management people around regularly, apparently something to do with the way their contract system in Sweden worked, which meant that at least 3 in every 5 long-term projects would either be shut down or have the goalposts moved in incomprehensible ways before they got anywhere near fruition. For a rough example, without getting into specifics, there were X number of CRM-type systems, and someone started a project to consolidate them into one. Before the project could reach its goal, a new manager took over and changed the scope of the project. And the result was there was now X plus 1 CRM-type systems. This sort of thing happened with alarming regularity, and almost always made things more complicated for the boots on the ground. It was ultimately an incredibly frustrating place to work. Story 16, Rico, USA. 7 years of doing everything my different account managers asked of me, including stuff that was most likely outside of the scope of work. My effort from the start of my employment helped expand a contract at a client's office. And there was so much training to do for Rico every year. So much. And the managers were always on my back to finish the training weeks before the due date. Then the managers encouraged us workers not to call in sick, not legal in Massachusetts to try to limit whenever your workers can use sick days, because Rico's floaters coverage was always short-staffed back then, and they preferred that you call in sick during a half-hour window in the morning. So if I was sick the night before my shift, I couldn't call in until 6 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. the morning of my shift, and screw me if I was sick as a dog and just wanted to sleep in. Had to wake up at 6 a.m. to make that sick call. And for all that, after 7 years, all of my pay raises totaled $2.00 hour. So when I left Rico, I was just barely making over $18/HR. In Boston, one of the highest cost of living areas in the nation. Story 17, Allied Universal. I've had a lot of issues with them, ranging from racism to lack of concern from the supervisors, meaning I've run into problems and they absolutely didn't care at all. Then, when another guard sat there on the phone for an hour talking shit about me to whomever it was, and I called the site supervisor, the guard tried attacking me physically. She got fired by the site and had to be fired from Allied as well due to misconduct and threats toward me. I even told the supervisor on the phone if they didn't do anything, I'd call the cops, but the site itself called for me when they saw the camera footage. Gonna add on that whenever I tried interviewing for a position, I'd get the interview and they'd cancel it within an hour of it happening. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.